to be.
Aspects necessary.
You've heard this talked about before.
For living an unpackaged life.
Oneness does not mean sameness.
We talk about these things all the time.
The wholeness of our lives.
There's a really good reason for that.
Represents everything.
They're worth repeating all the time.
Oneness, wholeness,
vulnerability, and authenticity. Hey there, I'm Reverend Dan. We are Soul Evolution Collaborative, a nonprofit based in universal spiritual principles offering possibilities for navigating the evolution of life in an authentic and intentional way. And this is Truth Be Told 2.0, a weekly series that is changing the norms, bringing you inspiring and uplifting messages to look at life a little bit differently. So welcome to the final episode in the Living an Unpackaged Life series, which has shown us that we don't need to walk around perfectly packaged all the time. This episode, Dare to Be, is the culminating step in unpacking our lives, and it dares us to be ourselves to the fullest extent we can be, to the best of our abilities, despite what we see in the world around us. We're going to look at 4 aspects in this episode that are needed to live this unpackaged life. This is how we show up differently, how we influence the world around us differently, how we see life differently. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Truth Be Told 2.0.
To be. So there are 2 key elements that I want to talk about that really will enhance our ability to dare to be. And the more that we can understand these 2 things, maybe on a different level, maybe from a different perspective than we've ever thought about them before, then it can really become the catalyst for us to live this kind of daring life, this life that is unpackaged that we've been talking about. So the first thing that I want to talk about is oneness. Now, I know if you've been in any sort of spiritual community, or if you've even paid attention to anything we've said, you've heard this talked about before, oneness. Now, oneness does not mean sameness. So that's, often we say we are all one, we know that we are all one, that we are connected, but that doesn't mean that we're all the same. What it means is that there is one thing that's back of all things, and that we are connected to that thing, that we are actually the individualized expressions of that thing. So my life and your neighbor's life and your friend's life and your family's life, all of those lives, all of those expressions are their own unique aspect of this one thing, this thing that some may call nature or God or universe, that one thing that is back of all things. And so when we understand that our life, that our expressions, who we are, those things that we're super proud of and those things that maybe we'd like to work on, that all of those things are the individualized expression of this one thing. So all those things are part of that. And so what this really empowers us to know and to understand, especially in this idea of daring to be, is that if I am connected to that one thing that is back of all things, then this just empowers me to live my own little spark of that in the bravest, daringest way possible. So it gives validity to who I am, to my authentic self, to those things that are my strengths, to those things that I have to bring into the world. And so to be daring is to live this expression, whatever it looks like for you, whatever it looks like for me, because we are connected to this one thing. And so that doesn't mean we all have to be the same. Actually, it means quite the opposite. But our connection, our oneness is through this connection to that one thing. It's not that we all have to believe the same, act the same, do the same, love the same things, love the same people, all the things. We don't have to live in a little box of sameness. But but we can instead understand that our connection is the thing that solidifies this idea of oneness. And so from that connection, then we are free to live this kaleidoscope of our lives and our experiences. And so that really kind of like flows over into the second thing, which is wholeness. Once again, if you've been around even for a minute, for a hot minute, at least here at Soul Evolution Collaborative, we talk a lot about wholeness because I really think it's the thing. And I think it even more so in this conversation when we're talking about giving ourselves permission to be who we are, we're giving ourselves the freedom to be who we are, and then daring to be those things like we're talking about today, is that the wholeness of our lives represents everything, all of our experiences, not just the things that we deem good or the things that we deem bad. Actually, I would like to even encourage us to just remove that idea, even from our framework. This idea of wholeness encompasses all the things, everything, every experience, every aspect, every emotion. They are all part of this wholeness, all part of this divine expression, like I said before. And so to drop the labels of putting, our Sunday best, to put it, our Instagram lives out front and all the things that we are struggling with or we're working on or we're trying to be a greater expression of, kind of keep those hidden because we don't want folks to see them. But instead, this daring to be really kind of flips everything inside out and really shines a spotlight on wholeness, that every aspect of us is valuable. Every emotion, every experience is part of our wholeness, is part of this participation of this divine presence experiencing itself in life. And so with that understanding of wholeness, that it's all a part of everything, then we can really dare to be. We can explore new ways of being. We can step out in ways we've never stepped out before, maybe make a mistake, and that's okay because we are given to have this expansive container to dare to be because it is all part of the whole. So this really frees us to explore, to make mistakes, to succeed, not succeed, whatever that looks like for you, just to begin to experience this life in a deeper and more profound way. And so in essence, understanding wholeness in this way, understanding oneness in this way, then daring to be really is the culmination of our divine action in this life.
While you're here, remember to hit like, subscribe, maybe even drop a comment. We would love to hear from you, and thanks for watching. In addition to oneness and wholeness, there are two other aspects necessary for living an unpackaged life: vulnerability and authenticity. Now, I know we talk about these things all the time. There's a really good reason for that. They're worth repeating probably all the time because they're not necessarily easy things to just step into and immediately change. Like, we don't just jump right into vulnerability. We don't just jump right into authenticity because, as we said before, if we did, it wouldn't really require being vulnerable. It wouldn't really require a shift to be authentic. We could just do it, and then it wouldn't be the thing that it is. The reason vulnerability is because it takes stepping across that threshold into a new way. And so what we're really talking about today in this culmination of the Unpackaged Life series is this idea of integrating oneness, wholeness, vulnerability, authenticity, integrating these four aspects into our lives in a way that is ideally consistent, that we're striving for consistency. We're probably not going to be at first, and maybe it takes a while. Maybe we get it quick. I don't know, whatever. It's going to be a little different for each of us, but integrating and attempting to be live a life of oneness and wholeness and vulnerability and authenticity, right? So when we integrate these ideas, then we can begin to be daring enough to actually step out and be. right? When we get it into our new, dare I say, our new normal, right? When we create a new habit or pattern for ourselves, then we get to just be. When oneness and wholeness and vulnerability and authenticity become the new default, we just get to show up. But until then, it takes practice, right? And so vulnerability, again, something we've talked a lot about, but this month I think it's a little different because it's vulnerability from this place of daring to really be vulnerable and kind of doing the thing anyway, right? I think that's the take on vulnerability this month is, in the past, we've kind of talked about vulnerability from the perspective of finding your place to belong, where it's safe to kind of edge your way in to being vulnerable. I think this month we're talking about being daring enough to kind of step out and do the thing anyway, right? The thing that maybe we're scared of doing, the thing that maybe makes us uncomfortable. Now, I'm not saying we jump out into unsafe places, but places where our old thoughts say it's uncomfortable. Our old thoughts say we should be scared of that thing. We've never done it. It's new to us. In those places, being daring enough to jump out and do it anyway, enough that we develop this consistency with it, that it's just habit at this point. We don't have to think again. We don't have to remind ourselves, right? Because we're doing it consistently enough. And for me, this is like, if you've ever taken a class or a workshop or a retreat on anything that's like self-development, like, right? While you're in the class, it's really easy to think about the topic and understand the topic. And there's this like, this sense of like, I totally get it. I get what we're talking about here. And then on the drive home, or, as you're signing off Zoom, there's kind of like that, wait, what did we talk about? And there's this really common experience of like, it fades really quickly because those old mechanisms jump back into place really quickly. And so it does take that consistent reminding ourselves, like, so with vulnerability, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to do the thing anyway, right? And I think authenticity, it's the same thing. Authenticity, it's about showing up as we are. When we get to that point where we don't need to remind ourselves anymore, right? Authenticity, showing up as we are, showing up, doing the thing anyway, being ourselves. When we develop the new way, when we develop that new thought process that's second nature to us because we've done it consistently enough, right? But then we get the questions like, well, how do I know what's authentic? How do I know for me what's authentic? And this month we shared a blog about gave this analogy of your life being like a bunch of like a water park, right? And so you're walking around your life, you're walking around this water park, and there's all these different pools all over the place. Well, imagine if you were in the process of learning to swim, you're going to approach these different pools in different ways, right? And so that is the authenticity. The authenticity of you is, how do I approach stepping into each one of these pools from the perspective of learning to swim? And so I think authenticity itself is that same thing. How do I approach these different positions in life, these different situations in life, knowing that I'm learning how to swim? And then when we get used to swimming, we can show up more consistently in those places. It doesn't mean it's any less authentic when we're learning or when we've been doing it for a long time. But again, it's the showing up, it's the willingness to show up, to be vulnerable, to be authentic. And of course, all of that takes oneness and wholeness, recognizing this in our life. And I think it's again, this month, it's all about daring yourself to do life differently, different from how it seems everyone else is doing it, different from how you have done it before, different from the pull of what has in the past been usual, right? It is definitely possible to live this desirable, unpackaged life, but it takes stepping out and doing things differently. It takes being daring enough to unpackage yourself.